Okay, this is part 21, Mystery of the Serpent Seed. I haven't done one in a few months. That's because I've been doing this for 7 years. And when you work really hard and you only got 6 people, you kind of get a little discouraged. So I got a little discouraged and I hadn't done anything in a while, but I know I had to get back to it. So we're coming back to it. And this one is to show you the connection between the copper and the serpent in the garden, as well as a few other things. That's just the main thing. So we'll get on with it. I don't know how many times I'm going to try this till I get it right, but this is on the serpent cults. The reason I'm doing this, I want to show you the connection between the two, the copper and the serpents. But these were things that were found in Israel related to the copper serpent cults. 1 and 2 was bronze serpent found at Megiddo, somewhere around between 1650 and 1550 BC. Number 3 was found at Tel Mubarak, near a platform on the west side, and there are some things found there, that normal things like arrowheads, knives, rings, but an unusual thing was the copper dulcimer, some discs, and some seals that were in Mitannian style, from the land of Mitanni, in other words. And number 4 and 5 were found at Hatzor, and they're 2 copper serpents, believed to have been found in the Holy of Holies there, and they were from 1400 to 1300. And so they were very short, though, not quite 3 inches long, or one of them was. Now, 6 was found near Timnah, which is in southern Israel, and it's from about 1300 to 1100 BC. And the different thing about it was part of it was wrapped with gold tape, and it might have possibly had originally, the whole thing gold, who knows, but it's sit there a long time. So number 7 was a copper serpent dating from about 1100 to 900 BC, which is probably King David's time, and it was found at Gezer. And I've seen King David worship idols, that's not what I'm saying, but I'm just saying it was found approximately around his lifetime. And it was found on the floor of this circular structure there in the northern part of the tail at Gezer. So some people would call it a beam or bama, meaning a high place. And they also found some Cyprian pottery there, which was interesting. So kind of probably the area that this came from, Cypriot, or Cyprus, or what do you want to say? Pronounce that, however you want to pronounce it. But anyway, that's pretty much what they found there. But number 7, if you want to see it, you can. If you're ever in Israel, go to the Israeli Museum there in Jerusalem, and you can see it. And would be a pretty interesting thing to do, and you could associate what I'm talking about with it then. But there were a lot of serpent cults in times past. Even in the Midwest here in America, you see a lot of serpents on things, and in Peru and South America and different, all over the world, really. So it tells you there were a lot of people worshiping serpents then. And okay, what we've got here is you got a copper plaque at the top left. Don't know where it was found. Then you got the fertility goddess that looks like a pot. She was found in Ugarit, and it was a gold plaque from about 1550 to 1300 BC. Then you've got the 2 in the middle. The one at the top was a fertility goddess. She was on an Egyptian stela, and her name was Kadeshet. That means holy. She was in the 19th, 20th dynasty. And then you've got the one on the bottom. This was found at Bet Shemesh. It's also a terracotta plaque, approximately 1400 to 1200. And then you've got the one on the bottom right. It was from Gezer. It's a terracotta plaque from about 1400 to 1200 BC. Okay, this is a picture of the copper death mask. Some people call it the Birdman. But do you notice that it has this serpent-like thing on the right side of it? You can see that on the right side. Wish I had some kind of pointer and probably make it a little easier, but I don't. But there's been copper objects found from Oklahoma, Minnesota, Texas, Florida, Louisiana, basically all over the United States, not including all over the world. But this one was found in the United States, and they are made from beaten copper. And they believe to be made sometime during what they call, archaeologists call Mississippian period, somewhere around 1000 AD to 1600. I I believe it was earlier than that. I believe a lot of these sites that they date later than what they were. But they call this kind of copper Ruposi or Ruposi. I'm not really sure how that's pronounced. Anyway, copper. I didn't say silver. Well, it wasn't silver, it was copper. But that way it looks three-dimensional, has more appearance of the real thing. Some of these were found with engraved shell, what they call gorgets, shell cups. They're done in what's called the classic Braden figural style. That's the name some archaeologists gave it. But anyway, what they do is a lot of times they would make these things out of copper, and they would make them in the form of humans or animals or this, that, and the other. And I believe it has to do with what they worshipped. I can't say for sure, but anyway, people just call this the Birdman. And you see it in a lot of, you found, I mean, even in Peru, in South America, you see things that looks like the bird, and they call him the Birdman or something similar to that. And they use a different word, but I don't know Spanish, so I can't tell you the words they use. But different places, they're going to call them different things, but it basically means that. But sometimes they believe that they were used on the head or put as breastplates. You also found things that was made from shell and pottery and was exchanged. And you found pottery copied. You found it distributed amongst different peoples. In other words, you find a lot of this stuff all over the United States, all over South America. And I don't know about Canada. I haven't really studied too much in Canada, what's been found or anything, but I know there's been a few things. But it amazes me how that things from Europe, Middle East, other countries are so much similar to what you find here in the United States. And they want to tell us, scientists and different people want to tell us that they didn't come over, they all come over the land bridge. Well, you know, I'm beginning not to believe that anymore. It's not that I really believed it much to start with, but anyway, I don't know. It's just, to me, it feels like they dumbed people down, like they act like people were stupid back then, and I think people were just as intelligent then as they are now. I actually think they were more intelligent, to be honest about it. Definitely had more common sense, for sure. But nonetheless, I'm not here to put anybody down or anything like that. I'm just trying to teach a lesson. I just don't like the way that sometimes people of ancient times were dumbed down, because I think they were pretty smart myself. I can see the evidence of it. Okay, this talks about the rattlesnake disc, but it also talks about other things as well. I found an interesting thing. This disc was found at Moundville, Alabama. I've been to Moundville several times, to the mounds there. But the hand and eye symbol that you see here is much like the Hamsa that you find in the Middle East. It was in the hand, it was an eye. It's very popular in Israel. But for some reason, it just, even when I was in Israel, even though a lot of people use it and believe in it, to me, it just never felt quite right. And so I wouldn't buy one. I accidentally bought something, had one on it one time because it was too small and I couldn't see it. But I never wear it because of that. But anyway, this hand with an eye in the palm, and then you have it also on the disc on the left there as well. But it's a falcon-like or forked eye symbol, a two-lobed arrow, the cross and circle design, and a petal-like design. These were things that were found in this area at Moundville, at the mounds. But the Birdman that we mentioned a while ago has been connected to a mythical hero god known as the Morning Star or Red Horn. Now, I want to talk about that a minute, because that's very interesting, because in the Bible, Satan is called the Morning Star. And, of course, people have always associated him as having red horns, which I thought was kind of unusual. But all of that just jumped out at me as I read this. I thought it was very interesting. But it does sound like a description of our enemy, Satan. No put down to the natives of the Midwest or any American native communities or anything. It's just, I'm telling you what I'm observing and what I'm seeing, and you know. But let me tell you a little bit about Red Horn. I thought it was very interesting. Red Horn was a Sioux Indian myth about a god who was made by the creator god. Now, I want you to listen close to this. for believers. I mean, you know, people who aren't believers, they're going to see things different than what we do anyway. So, but he was made by the Creator. God had 5 brothers, and they were sent here to rescue mankind. He also has the name Morning Star. Legend says he fought giants. He's said to be a star. Some thought maybe Venus, the great star Orion. And he's found many times on beaten copper and shell etchings, not necessarily here, but all over the place. Versions of the Birdman seem to represent human-like bird deities or costume dancers associated with warfare rituals. They would wear like these bilobed headdresses, and they would have them having, you know, he would have like a long nose. Sometimes he'd have braids, just different things, you know, associated with the men of the time, the male of the time. And there were different tribes like the Osage and the Winnebago tribes that these rituals and these traditions came from. But then some of them even seem to be female or bigendered or genderless. And I have heard this said too, because of the way that we believe in the Western world, Western society, we can't really understand these ancient tribes when they had the bigendered thing and all. But honestly, I do not believe they stood back then for what they stand for now. They could have, I don't know. But I don't think anybody really knows that. I mean, here they are trying to interpret because I don't know why. They think they know more than anybody else. That's what it seems to me. And I'm like, why are you going to give it this interpretation? Because the way you see things, when you say we can't understand because of our beliefs, basically, and we give it this interpretation, but, you know, in my opinion, they're doing the same thing. So, you know, we can't say what they thought back then. We weren't there. Unless they find some writings, and you seldom do that in Native American. You just don't, you don't hardly find any writing. If you did, they'd know more about them. So, you know, we really don't know for sure. You know, I never saw dinosaurs. I can't begin to understand a dinosaur, really. Now they claim to have dinosaur bones in the museum, but do they really? You know, can you prove it? Not really. But anyway, some of their other myths strongly echo the Pan-Mesoamerican, things like the underwater serpent deity. And to me, that sounds like Leviathan, the Bible talks about. And the Mayas had a god, it's Itzamna. I'm not sure I'm saying that right. But they say this is remnants of an old religion. You ain't going to hear a lot of things. Doesn't matter if it's a bird or moth or whatever. My point on here that I'm trying to show y'all and that I'm trying to make is that the ideas and the uses of copper in these old areas of America is so similar to the gods from other parts of the world that there's got to be a connection to them all. And as a believer, I think I can understand that connection. I believe I do understand that connection. But I'm just giving you a little bit on the area of Moundville in different areas that has these symbols here. The hand, the eye. I don't know what they would have been called back then, but it was pretty significant to me when I saw it after seeing it in Israel. And I went to Israel before I went here, so the first time. And so it's you know, it's pretty important in the Middle East, and apparently it was in this area because you see it, you know, a lot in the area of Moundville and some other places as well. You know, this is a picture of what they call the copper death mask, and it's somewhere in the Andes. I don't know if Peru or what's country exactly, but just know they found it somewhere in the Andes. But I thought this is pretty interesting. You can see that pretty green, bluish green color on there, and realize it is definitely copper. I don't know why copper turns that color after it's aged so long, but I think it makes a beautiful patina on things that are copper. Okay, this we're going to talk about the Sumerian serpent god. This one on the left is Kaningazita. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing these words right, but nonetheless, I'm trying. But if I researched it a lot, I'm sure I could come up with some more information on a lot of this stuff, but you know, I don't like to boggle people down with too much information. I want to give you enough you understand, but you know, not so much that you're like, oh, that's more than I can handle. But we just really can't get away from the subject, the copper being tied in with the serpent seed and the serpent. But I feel like the abundant use of copper all over the world, the snake symbol the whole world over, it should be evident to you. All religions include the snake in their worship except for Judaism and Christianity. I don't know that Islam does. I really don't know enough about it to know. But many of the religions of the world, and there may be some others that don't either, but there are so many because you can see it everywhere that in archaeology that they've gone, they found it. But Judaism and Christianity are different in that they don't worship the serpent, but they understand who Nachash is, and that he was the one who deceived Eve in the garden. I'm not saying that the children of Israel never fell prey to worshiping false idols, because it's evident in Scripture that they did, but it was idolatry, and God judged them for it, and they knew they had been judged. But I'm wanting you to see the connection between the serpent in the Garden of Eden and all through history. And as I said about red horn and the morning star a while ago, it's all, I believe with all my heart it's connected to the serpent, because even with the names being the same, it just, I mean, it's very telling to me. In these pictures here, I want to show you some very interesting things. If you look at all four of these pictures, the flying serpent motif. The Israeli brigade uses this motif even today. That's their paratroopers, I believe. I'm not sure. It's an Israeli brigade anyway. But the one in the middle is Clepius. His rod, it was used to represent medicine in the past, but look how the serpent is down below on his left leg there. And he was the one who come up with the caduceus, or the symbol of the for medicine. First, the rod of Asclepius. What does the rod of Asclepius look like? To me, it looks like the way that I picture that the serpent that Moses put on the rod would have looked. And that may be where he got it from Scripture. I don't know. But the fact that that's used as a symbol of healing is kind of strange if you think about it. Yeah, I know they looked up on the serpent that Moses had put on the pole, and they were healed and stuff like that. But it's just odd that that would be used as a symbol of healing, because when you think what a real true snake or serpent can do, it can kill someone if it's poisonous. So it's an odd symbol, really, if you think about it, to use for represent healing to me. And then this last one, serpent, is on the pole, is the fourth one on the right side, is the one they actually use today, or very close to what they use today to represent modern medicine. It varies with hospitals and rescue squads and things like that, but that's what they use. So. Okay, now I want to kind of vary off from the copper serpent and the serpent in the garden and go to a different subject. Now, probably going to have some people say, oh, those pictures are fake, and some of them may be. Can't say whether they are or not. I didn't make them, so I don't know, and I'm just using them Fair Use Act to teach with. I'm claiming that as my use of them, just, you know, Fair Use Act. But I asked the question, I don't remember which lesson it was, but it's back maybe the last one or one before that, whatever. Was there any high places, standing stones, pillars, or groves, or anything that we had mentioned, or bones from a giant found anywhere? And then there's a lot of evidence that's being covered up, I know, but there has, in the last 100 or 200 years, there's actually been a lot of evidence of giants, but it's always grab it up, hide it, cover it up, destroy it, or something. So, you know, it makes it difficult. And we can see through a lot that's going on in our government today that, and I don't like to get in politics, but I'm just using this as an example, that there's a lot of cover-up in our government. Always has been, probably always will, as it seems to be what governments do. But nonetheless, that right there should tell you something. But there has been evidence, like I said, of giants in the last 200 years or so, whether people want to believe it or not, whether they still have that evidence or not. And you hear people, like I said, say a lot of these pictures are hoaxes, and some of them may very well be, but I don't think all of them are. So I'm showing you quite a few, and because out of that few, there's got to be at least 2 or 3 that are real. Now they say the one on the left was a hoax, but nobody's proven that to me. So I use it. I think it was from California, and then this other one, I did have one from India, but took that out. But then this one on the right is supposed to be from Pakistan, and so I am going to give you some information from some old newspapers. And if you want to look these up yourself and check them out yourself, I think the site is called chroniclingamerica.loc.gov. If it's still there and if you can still get to it, because I did this several years ago, so this on PowerPoint to teach to my church, and so I don't know that they're still there, but I was going to tell you about these newspaper recordings, or not recordings, but articles that I found. The Polynesian paper in Honolulu on January the 2nd, 1841 wrote, on the eastern shore of Pascagoula Bay in Jackson County, Mississippi, near its mouth are the ruins of an ancient fortification. It appears to have been constructed chiefly of seashells. Within this, several feet below the surface, have been found charred coals and fragments of a peculiar kind of earthenware, together with human bodies. Among them were discovered parts of human skeleton of gigantic proportions. The upper part of the skull was said to be sufficiently large so that it would fit loosely over the largest modern heads. All historical traces of the origin of this fortress have long disappeared. The Lewisburg Chronicle, Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, on May 22, 1850, wrote this: a huge Indian skeleton was lately dug up at Harsimus, New Jersey, among the oyster shell strata. It measured 8 feet in length. The skull measured 2 feet in circumference and 15 inches over the top. Now, a lot of people say, oh, they didn't know how to measure these. What gets me is some of these people that measured these skeletons that were found were doctors. And then they want to try to say they didn't know how to measure. I think a doctor probably would have, a veterinarian, would have known how. Okay, this is from the Daily Dispatch of Richmond, Virginia, April 28, 1856. The Burlington, which is in Iowa, State Gazetteer mentions the finding of 8 human skeletons of gigantic proportions in a vault which was discovered in excavating for a cellar. And the Grand River Times in Grand Haven, Michigan goes on to state that the previous paper says that while some workmen were engaged in excavating for the cellar of Governor Grimes' new building on the corner of Main and Valley Streets, they came upon an arched vault some 10 feet square, which on being opened was found to contain 8 human skeletons of gigantic proportions. The walls of the vault were about 14 inches thick, well laid up with cement or indestructible mortar. Now we're talking about in the late 1800s. The vault is about 6 feet deep from the base to the arch. The skeletons are in a good state of preservation, and we venture to say are the largest human remains ever found, being a little over 8 feet long. Well, I think they were mistaken on that, because I think there were some a little larger than that had been found. But, I don't know if I read it here or not, but I remember we went to Graves Mound, or the mound up in Wheeling, West Virginia, a couple years ago, and I had read that they had found some 2 there, I think, that were over 8 feet long, and they just magically disappeared. Isn't that strange? Okay, the New York Times on November 21st, 1856 wrote, the skeleton of a giant found. A day or two since, some workmen engaged in subsoiling the grounds of Sheriff Wickham at his vineyard in East Wheeling, this is in West Virginia, came across a human skeleton. Although much decayed, there was a little difficulty in identifying it by placing the bones, which could not have belonged to others than a human body, in their original position. The impression made by the skeleton in the earth and the skeleton itself were measured by the sheriff and a brother in the craft locale, both whom were prepared to swear that it was 10 feet 9 inches in length. Its jaws and teeth were almost as large as those of a horse. The bones are to be seen at the sheriff's office. So see, now they kept these bones in the sheriff's office. The Wheeling Times also did an article on it. So, I mean, for a while they were in the sheriff's office, and this was long before the NAGPRA law was passed. I mean, you know, long, long time. So people were coming in and seeing that. They couldn't have been lying about it because people were coming in there and seeing it. Wheeling Times wrote March 16, 1859 by the Holmes Republican. Discovery of a mysterious vault, Jackson O, February 21st. Our village is full of wonder and excitement. Martin Marker, J.W. Hughes, and Washington Long, in digging a grave in the cemetery near this village this morning, about 10 o'clock, came to a large flat stone about 4 feet below the surface, which further stopped their progress until they procured assistance and removed the stone from its resting place of ages, when it was found to have closed the entrance to a subterranean vault. All efforts so far, and it was 3 p.m., to enter it with a light have proved unsuccessful on account of the foul air with which it is filled. Now, and I find in my studies and research of probably 40 years, close to 40 years, that lots of times when archaeologists go in caves or underground vaults and things like this, that they have found that they have had to wait because people have been known to get really sick or to die from the air in there. I don't remember exactly what they said it was, maybe carbon dioxide or something, I don't know, monoxide or whatever you call it. But nonetheless, they couldn't go in because it smelled really bad and the air was not good. Anyway, it goes on. By means of a rake, human bones of a gigantic size have been raised in a small chain of silver with the coins attached to each end. The coins, though much defaced by time, have the appearance of those used by Romans in the days of Scipio Africanus, though there were evident traces of hieroglyphic devices which cannot be deciphered. And I'd like to know what was in those, what language that was. The men of the cemetery have, by means of burning straw, made light in the vault, and though none have the courage to enter further than the entrance, it has been discovered that there is immediately to the west of the opening a chamber of about 10 feet square, with steps quite dilapidated down its eastern side. 3 other chambers branch out of this one to the north, one to the south, and the other to the west. We are all curious, of course, to know when and by whom these vaults were made and filled. Reverend Mr. Hunter. Now, I know they believe preachers and Christians lie nowadays, but I just don't believe they did back then. I don't believe they do now. I mean, you have some. I'm sure you have hypocrites that do, but, you know, I don't think that they were lying when they wrote this. But nonetheless, here's one from Clearfield, Pennsylvania, called Raftsman's Journal. It was July 25th, 1860. Some gigantic human remains in Minnesota found. One thigh bone measured 3 feet. March 2nd, 1866, Daily Union and American, Nashville, Tennessee. Skeleton of a giant found. His height, 36 feet. Teeth, 10 inches long. Now, that's a big one right there. Now, I have a little harder time believing on that one. I'm not saying I do, I'm not saying I don't, but no, if you want to not believe one, that would probably be the one people would choose. St. Joe's, Missouri correspondent of the St. Louis Republican says that a wonderful cave has been found in the bluffs about a mile above St. Joseph, which has been explored by some of the leading citizens of the place. Provided with all things necessary, they entered the cavern about 10 a.m. and were gone till 4 p.m. when they returned, expressing the greatest wonder and relating marvels too strange almost for credence. Before proceeding very far, they came to a vast and splendid chamber, whose ceilings and sides were adorned with various stalactites of every form and hue, and transparent in their brightness. Fishes, okay, this thing just jumped on me. Well, I'm going to have to find where it was at now. It just jumped on me. Fishes was the last thing I got to see before it just decides it wants to jump to another spot. That's the thing about computers, they'll mess you up. Fishes and beasts in human forms were represented by this brilliant secretion, and massive curtains of it, brilliant in hue, were pendant from the ceiling and hung heavily around the walls. Passing through this vast chamber, they found themselves in a sort of grotto, whose sides were formed of crystal columns and whose arched ceiling resembled a gorgeous bow of diamonds. Emerging from there, they beheld another hall, vaster than the first one and far more gorgeous in all its appointments. Here were niches, columns, recesses, fountains, all arranged as if by the hand of some great artist, and what was stranger still, a sort of low melody seemed to fill all the space. The last they attributed to the murmur of a crystal streamlet which leaped from a portion of the wall and ran into a recess over glittering pebbles. On one side was a raised, and then it stops. It says further information on this cave from March 15th, 1866, the Fayetteville Observer, Fayetteville, Tennessee. So this was in Tennessee. And I think it goes on to tell. On one side of this cave was a raised platform of pure marble, and upon it was found a human skeleton of gigantic size and in excellent preservation. Its length from head to foot was 38 feet 6 inches, and the circumference of the head was about 6 feet. We can easily believe about the size of the head, but we think the narrator has made the length of the skeleton too much. If you take off about 6 inches, there would be many who would believe in it. Okay, now that I don't understand. I mean, you're talking about 38 feet tall, and you can take off 6 inches and people will believe it. Okay, whatever you say. Anyway, more on this giant from Marshall County, Republican, Plymouth, Indiana, April 19th, 1864. Two of the teeth were dislocated and brought to town, and I've seen them. They're now on the counter of the Pacific Hotel for general inspection. One of them is 10 inches in circumference and the other about 6. It's almost impossible to imagine an animal large enough to use such masticators. And I think I'm going to stop on those stories for now, and we'll go to the next. Now I have one more picture of supposed to be a giant up in the orange holding a baby, but I've heard some say that was fake, heard say some say it was real, I don't know, but nonetheless. Then you find, I'm showing you an effigy pipe that was found at Hughes Mound in Oklahoma. Notice the shape of its head. It's important because it's going to go with this next subject we're talking about, and that would be the elongated skulls. They're at the bottom of the page. Now, the elongated skulls, I know they talk about putting the bands around the baby's head and stuff when they're born, and that will deform their heads. And I don't doubt that a lot of the skulls I found, that's the reason. But when you find a skull that the parietal plate is missing, or the split right here in the head, and there's one that goes across the head, and, you know, in baby, when they're born, they got that little soft spot in the middle of the head. That's because those plates have not grown together, and that's why you don't shake a baby or drop it on his head or anything, because those plates have not grown together. And so when you see those things are missing, I mean, you know, that tells you something's not right here. And when you say the foramen magnum, which is the hole that our neck right here sits, our spine, the top of it sits, it goes up into our skull and sits there. And when those things are misplaced, not in the right place, then there's something wrong. I mean, that's genetics. That's not natural. It's not. And when you find, and there actually was a fetus found in the mother's womb, and its skull was elongated. I mean, you can't say cradle boarding did that. And it's known, that is known to be a fact. That is a fact. So there's something strange. I mean, why would anybody want to do that to start with? Why did they start cradle boarding baby? There has to be a reason why they did that. They saw something, or they saw someone with heads like that for them to start doing that. There was something that caused them. They didn't just up one day, some mother said, oh, let's mess up our pretty baby's pretty head and make it have a cone shape out, cradle board in it. Oh yeah, right. There was something that caused them to do that. And I believe it goes back to their religion, to the faith, and I believe it also goes back to Genesis chapter 6. That's my beliefs. You can believe whatever you want to, but that's what I believe. And I found these pictures, and I thought they were quite interesting. Here's a man sitting there. He's got a shovel and a bag on his right. And then you see this skeleton in the wall. Well, now, I don't know if that's real or not. It could have been made up when they made all these other pictures of so-called giants. But if it is real, and we've got to take that possibility, then the only thing I could think of was a flood layer that this thing was caught in, and which would make sense with the Bible. go with the Word of God. And then you got the Mont Blanc Museum, the guy that found these fossils. He got that one up there, which that's not the real the real leg bone, I don't think. That was actually a remake of the original. But he's showing how high or how tall this giant was that bone was found from, and about how tall it had to have been. So that was pretty interesting as well. And many believe it to be a fact. But like I said, I don't know. Can't say for sure. But it's interesting nonetheless, because some people actually believe it, and it might be real. No, there's a lot of AI stuff out there now, but when these were made, I got these several years ago. AI had not really gotten quite as much to the fore as it has now. So, but I do believe they were giants. Now, whether these are, like I said, whether these are real or not, I can't say. But I'm gonna stop on that one. Here again, we have another picture of a giant skull, almost as big as the man himself, or maybe not quite as big as the man himself, but it's really big. Those newspapers read early, there's a lot in there about them, but I read on them that I'm going to read. I'm not going to read any more from them today. Probably won't again either, but I wanted to talk about that they were from 1832, I think, to 1999. And you know, people talk about people being tall. I know that there's something called giantism. I remember Henry Wadlow. Well, I don't remember him, but I've read about him. I remember reading about him. That he was, what, 11'8" or something like that. He was really tall, and he had giantism. And I know there's been people, the wrestler, I can't think of his name, he was really tall. There's been people that's had that, and they were really tall. And I know that it's possible in history, but I know that what I've heard, that some of these were tested and they did not have giantism. So, you know, I don't know. Like I said, I can't tell you for sure on anything, but I can tell you what I believe. But it's been said that Confucius was 9.5 feet tall. I don't know that either. But people like to read legends and mythology because they believe there's no truth in them. But I believe they hold a minuscule bit of truth. Because what the enemy does is he will take the truth and he'll throw just a small truth out there, but then he'll twist everything and lie and throw it all in there with the truth. And what happens is truth itself has a drawing power, and it will draw people. But when it's mixed with a lie or a half truth, then people are deceived because of that small minuscule bit of truth in it, and they're deceived by that. And so, you know, you have to be careful that we tell the whole truth, not part of a truth and a lie. We have got to tell the whole truth. And if we don't know something to be a fact, we need to say we don't know it to be a fact. But if we know it's true, then we need to say that too. But if you find some legends with the same things in them, like in different places of the world, maybe in South America, and then you got something in Africa, or you got something in Europe, or something in America, North America, or United States, or, you know, Australia. I mean, these places, Egypt. I mean, you know, there's got to be something to it. I mean, and you just have to kind of dig around and find out what's going on. But, you know, that's the problem. People say, well, nobody came from Europe over the United States until blah, 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 such and such time. But that doesn't make any sense, because so many of the things in Peru and parts of South America and parts of Latin America and parts of Mexico are so similar to things in the United States and so similar to things in Egypt and the Middle East. So you're like, no, there's no way. No, there's no way. They had to have come from one source somewhere at some point in time. So, I mean, and it's ignorant to believe anything else, really. But Native Americans tell about large ancient giants who they fought and eventually drove from their lands. And the strange part is they have blonde hair or red hair. The blonde sometimes would have blue or green eyes. The red hair would have green eyes. And it's known that they had double rows of teeth. They had 6 fingers on each hand and foot. Well, that's what Og and them in the Bible had. Goliath, they had 6 fingers on each hand and on their 6 toes on each foot. it doesn't mention double rows of teeth, but I mean, for that to even come up, there has to be some truth in that, because I mean, who would think to give them double rows of teeth? They apparently found them, and they did have double rows of teeth. But anyway, this was way before even the gospel was brought to America or anything. And things ideas that they had that come from the Bible, I mean, you know, they had to get that information from somewhere. And it is logical that someone before Christians came to America, that they came and told them something that actually came from the Bible lands or from somewhere. And also there were light-skinned people who came to their lands to get copper from the land. Peru has a legend of a god named Viracocha. They called him the creator. He made the giants, and they became so evil, he destroyed them with a flood. Well, I mean, that's kind of what's in the Bible, you know. I don't know about you, but seeing this minuscule portion of truth mixed with a lie really irritates me. And I know where it comes from. The Bible says that Satan is a liar. He was a liar from the beginning. He's the father of all lies. And, you know, when I hear somebody that just all they can do is everything that comes out of their mouth is a lie, I'm like, okay, I know who your daddy is. Both Arabic legends and Greek myths claim that giants built the megalithic structures all over the world. Let's study some megalithic structures and sites all over the world and see if men our size could have made them or had the technology to make them. Although, as I said, I know the Book of Enoch's not part of the Bible, there is food for thought there. There's some good historical facts in it. It teaches that when the angels fell, that they taught the women how to make weapons of war, how to war, cosmetics, spells, and all kinds of evil, astrology, and lots of other things. And if you notice what the tree he partook of was, it was the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Not just the knowledge of good, but the knowledge of good and evil. Genesis chapter 2 and 3 tells us they learned knowledge by taking of this fruit. But there was as much evil knowledge, you got to realize that, as there was good knowledge. Did they automatically know the evil, or were they taught it by the fallen ones? And I think it was probably a little bit of both. Knowledge in chapter 2 is the word da'at of Genesis, and comes from the word yada, means to know intimately, the word that's used in chapter 3. But da'at also means cunning and wittingly. So when they partook of this tree, they came to know evil intimately as well as they did good. And knowing evil, you'll know the cunning and the witting ways of the Nachash, the serpent. It wasn't God's intention that man would war with one another. God didn't intend for man to fight and war. We got all this warfare going on in the world right now, and we got a group that wants to keep it going because they make money off of that. But it wasn't God's intention for man to war. It wasn't God's intention for man to fool with the cold and worship the angels and worship the fallen ones, but they did. But that's why God told them not to eat of this particular tree, because he knew that if they did, that's what they would do. And he's still telling man, don't partake of this tree. But the blood has become tainted with sin from Adam's fall, and so man's going to partake of the tree, even today. We might not have the literal tree of the knowledge of good and evil, but people are still eating from it. So are there any old megaliths possibly built by the giants or ancient worship sites found anywhere today? And if you can't disagree with me without getting ugly, then please don't make any comments. And I'm not trying to be ugly. It's just, you know, I'm trying to build my channel, and it just, you know, it hurts when people write ugly stuff. I mean, it don't bother me. I mean, I can overlook it and go on, but there's no cause for it. If you disagree with somebody, just go and leave them alone. You don't have to deal with them, you know. And I know people don't like to hear comments like this, and I don't even like to make them, but, you know, I just want people to be nice. That's all I want. But we're all humans. We can make mistakes. But let's just, you know, let's be nice to one another. And nobody's done that. I just want to kind of head it off or get started, you know. But I think I'm going to stop right there for this one, and then the next one we're going to show some pictures of megalithic structures and talk about them. Thank you for watching, and I do hope you'll come back again. Bye-bye.